Hello, horror fans, and welcome back to the Script to Screen podcast, where we delve into the spine-tingling world of horror cinema. Each week, we look at the scariest scenes, unmask the deeper meanings behind your favourite horror films, and explore the psychology of fear that keeps us coming back for more.
From script analysis to scene breakdowns, we'll be dissecting your favourite horror movies to see just what makes them tick. So whether you're a seasoned horror aficionado or just starting to explore the genre, join us as we unravel the spine-tingling stories that haunt the silver screen.
I'm Will.
And I'm Lee.
Now, for those of you who may be new to the show, please check out our website. That's script2screenpodcast.com. You can find a lot more insight there into the scripts and the films that we cover. We have scareology graphs illustrating the scares in each of the films and annotated script excerpts to highlight some of the ideas we cover when dissecting the screenplays. So if you want to go deeper on your favorite scripts, there's more to interest, entertain, and delight over at script2screenpodcast.com. Also, if you like what we're doing here, please do share the episodes. It really helps us reach new people, and leaving a review would be awesome as well. That would be amazing. But that said, how have you been, Lee? And maybe more importantly, what have you been watching?
Besides wilting in this horrific heat wave that we've had,
It's
not been. It's been awful. I know we're terrible. We're like it's always cold, it's always wet, and as soon as like the sun comes out,
you can never please the English weather-wise, can you?
That is very, very true. What have I been watching? I've checked out some pretty good shit this week. First up was Apostle on Netflix, which is a really good kind of folk horror effort, starring the always brilliant Dan Stevens and the equally great Michael Sheen. It's very much a slow burn affair, but it was beautifully shot. Boasted a wonderful fatality involving a large hand drill and some poor chap's cranium.
Ouch.
And this was written by and directed by Gareth Evans, who
Yep.
he's on one hell of a roll at the moment. So it's definitely checking out. It's a lot more slow and low key than his other stuff, but really good, really good. What else did I watch? I watched the remake of Death Stalker, starring Daniel Bernhardt, and this was just delightful. It was so cheap and cheesy, and yet it kind of wore that campiness so proudly. It was impossible not to get sucked in on the journey. You know,
Nice.
I mean, I've been a fan of Bernhardt since the old 1998 Mortal Kombat TV show. Did you ever watch that?
No, I didn't actually.
Oh man, it was. I remember it being awesome. I've never gone back and rewatched it, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, lives in the
But
memories.
at the time, I loved it. I thought it was amazing, and he was fantastic in it. He was like one of the main characters.
Nice.
And I always get a kick out of anything he pops up in, and it's great to see him in a leading role again, rather than just like an imposing henchman, which he seems to have absolutely cornered the market on. Like you'll have no doubt seen him. If you don't know the guy, you'll know the face. And finally, I checked out a little movie called Host, and this one was really interesting as it plays out over the course of a Zoom meeting during the pandemic, and a bunch of friends perform an online séance, which goes spectacularly wrong, and this really felt like a Paranormal Activity movie, you know, right down to its bones. And as a huge fan of that franchise, this was right up my alley. It's short and sweet, just an hour long, and I really got a kick out of this one. I highly recommend it. But how about you, my man? What has been on your screens this week?
Yeah, well, they sound like a cracking bunch of films, Lee, there. Yeah, I might have to check a few of those out. Well, this week, so I've watched a few movies. I watched an old thriller called Run Silent, Run Deep, which is sort of it's a cracking submarine thriller from Robert Wise. It's written by John Gay, starring Burt Lancaster and Clark Gable. Fantastic film, Lee, like super tense. This is, you know, Das Boot before Das Boot was a thing. It's great stuff. And the two leads just bounce off each other wonderfully well. You know, they're sort of antagonistic towards each other at the start, but they learn to respect each other through the mission. It's just cracking stuff, beautifully shot. I also caught a film called Black Bag from Steven Soderbergh. It's written by David Coep. So yeah, it's a great sort of director screenwriter combo. I think they also did Presents fairly recently, these two. But
Hmm.
yeah, this one's a spy thriller set in London, which is great. Has a really great cast. Yeah, and this one I thought was really kind of effective. I mean, I love kind of Steven Soderbergh anyway. He's just one of my sort of filmmaking heroes, so I think I was predisposed to kind of enjoy this one. But yeah, this was pretty good.
Nice.
I saw Inherent Vice from Paul Thomas Anderson that stars Joaquin Phoenix. And this one's sort of a tale of, like a sort of half-baked, kind of, permanently kind of stoned private investigator working in LA in the 70s. It's a really sort of twisty plot. Some great cameos in this one. Martin Short's absolutely fantastic. Really beautifully shot, this one. And Phoenix is really, really good as well. Certainly not kind of Anderson's best work, but I thought it was a load of fun and it had a lot of charm as well. And I love a
Hmm.
sort of private investigator movie, so this one really sort of tickled my belly. Lastly, I saw a classic movie called Excalibur.
Ah,
And this one was from John Borman and written by Borman and Rospo Pallenberg. I do love John Borman films, Lee. I don't know if you're any sort of you have any experience really with John Borman films, but I really love them. And this one was just kind of bonkers. I mean, I think it's obviously sort of Arthurian
yeah.
legends. They are really, I think, quite difficult to adapt tonally. And this kind of proved to be the case here as well. So famously, not really enough money to make this one the way Borman wanted to. But it has some really charming moments, some great set pieces. It's also like a who's who of early sort of 80s Irish talent. And it's worth a watch just for that. Liam Neeson pops up with a fantastic beard.
Hey.
So yeah, it's worth a watch just for that. And the sparkly Armley, it's
Yeah.
absolutely a treat for the eyes. So this is definitely worth a watch. It's flawed, but I think it's definitely worth a watch.
I think I have seen Excalibur when I was a nipper.
Yeah,
I
it would
don't
have been
remember anything
a
about it
TV.
except the really sparkly, shiny armor kind of thing.
Very shiny
Um,
indeed.
but I'll add it to my ever lengthening list of things to watch, and hopefully I'll get around to checking it out at
To
some
watch or
point.
to avoid, I'm not sure. No, but it was fun, man. It was I love
Awesome.
John Borman movies, so
Yeah.
that was really good.
Awesome, dude. So, what is strapped on the table for dissection this week?
Okay, well, this weekly we're going to be looking at Leigh Whannell's The Invisible Man.
Oh, this is such a great film. I've literally wanted to cover this one from the inception of the podcast, but I've only recently been able to get a hold of the script, so I really cannot wait to deep dive into this bad boy.
Nice. So this was written and directed by Leigh Whannell and released February 28th, 2020, and filmed on a budget of around $7 million. The Invisible Man will go on to make a staggering 144.5 million at the global box office, Lee.
There's that Blumhouse magic for you.
Yeah, now, obviously, I've heard you talk reverently about the Blumhouse approach. And I know, you probably secretly harbor a little dream of working with them someday, Lee,
No secret, dude.
sometime
Yeah.
in the future.
Hire me, Blumhouse.
So, yeah, take a moment, like elaborate a little on how the studio works and what makes them so appealing to horror writers like yourself.
Okay, well, the success of Blumhouse Studios and Jason Blum's general philosophy is it's kind of nothing short of brilliant, really. I mean, the core idea is that the studio will bankroll and release low budget, i.e., sort of like $1 to $10 million films. They allow maximum creator input, minimal studio interference, but with a very strict and limited budget and time scale. So the idea being that if they release, I don't know, say 15 to 20 movies on $100 million combined budget, doesn't really matter if they aren't all successful because the hits will more than cover the failures.
Yeah.
And let's be real, a movie shot on, say, a 3 million budget only has to rake in a little over double that to kind of start turning a real profit. And because Blumhouse deals mostly in horror, a genre that is constantly popular and with an instant built-in fan base, these movies rarely wind up failing really tanking hard, especially with streaming sales added to the mix and DVD and Blu-ray if people besides me ever still buy those things.
Well, I do.
Good
Physical
man.
media fan, me, Lee. Yeah, so I mean, it's an interesting point, though, isn't it? That being that horror fans kind of do eagerly consume most relevant media, whereas maybe fans of sci-fi or romance, possibly tend to be a bit more picky.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, horror fans are just such a fucking great fan base to have because, we don't care who's in it. We don't care what the budget is. Sometimes, even if it's particularly great, we don't really that fussed. We'll give anything a go.
Yeah.
And when you do give us something great, we'll remember that shit and word of mouth will spread quickly and it'll spread hard. I've said it before and I'll happily die on this hill, but I think horror fans are pretty much the best bunch of people in the world.
Bold claims, Lee. Bold claims. I'm sure there's a few Red Cross workers out there who may just may disagree with you slightly. Uh, but to summarize, anyway, the basis of the Blumhouse method boils down to mass producing inexpensive movies with little studio interference, in the knowledge that the failures won't be too costly and that successes will bankroll the studio.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, just like The Invisible Man, for instance, Now, we're going to be comparing the film to a copy of the script dated November 2018, written, of course, by Leigh Whannell, and the script weighs in at 105 pages.
Alrighty then, folks. Settle into your seats as we strap down and slice open The Invisible Man. After escaping her abusive tech genius boyfriend, Cecilia believes she's finally free when he apparently commits suicide. But as invisible forces begin tormenting her, she becomes convinced he has found a way to stalk her unseen, while everyone around her dismisses her terror as paranoia and psychological collapse. So we open on a cliffside vista. The waves crash against the rocks, Lee, the residue of the water briefly highlighting the opening titles as though they were themselves invisible. It's a really cool bit of opening imagery. Atop this cliffscape, we see the lights of a beautiful house, and clearly a very expensive one. We head inside this modern mansion to find a sleeping woman, Cecilia Cass, played by the wonderful Elizabeth Moss. And she's either the world's lightest sleeper or she's fakingly, because her eyes flick open, bright and alert, to check the clock next to her, and the clock reads 3:41 a.m.
Oh, it's 3:51 a.m. in the script.
Shocking deviation there. So why do you think this change occurred, Lee? No, I'm only joking. No, she's ahead of schedule. Anyway, after carefully slipping out of bed without waking the man sleeping next to her, she retrieves a bottle of sleeping pills tucked under her side of the mattress.
Yeah, it's a cool little technique here with her name printed on the label and a nice close-up macro shot. The audience now knows that this is Cecilia Cass as well. So we all
Yeah,
know
it's
who she is now.
nice little bit of exposition through mise en scene, isn't it? Great stuff.
Mm.
So now Cecilia creeps around the bed to the man's side and retrieves a half empty glass of water. She gives it a quick swirl to confirm what we already suspect. She's spiked the drink with her Pillsley. She disposes of the spiked water in the ensuite bathroom before retrieving a bug out bag stashed in a vent behind a walk in wardrobe. In it, she stuffs her passport, some cash, some pills, and a few other necessities. We also see some contraceptive pills stashed in there. And it's interestingly how loud everything is here. The trickling water, the rattling pills, everything is cranked up to the max, all in an attempt to put us in Cecilia's headspace, and it's wonderfully effective.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, in the script, Cecilia replaces the spiked water with tap water, but this was omitted from the film. In the script, she also grabs a selfie stick she has stashed to reposition a security camera outside the bedroom.
Yeah. Now, on screen, she has a small step ladder for the same purpose. And after the camera is moved, she brings up the security feed on her phone and zooms in on the sleeping man. So now she can check he's still asleep while she presumably makes her escape. She moves now into a super high tech lab. The walls are decorated with framed awards and some scientific accolades.
Mm. In the script, we can see that these belong to one Adrian Griffin, but you can't really make these out on screen. Also, just before this scene in the script, Cecilia encounters Zeus the Doberman, Adrian's dog slash guard dog, attack dog, and plies him with dog treats to keep him quiet. But we're actually introduced to him a little later on screen.
Yeah. So back in the lab, and Cecilia logs into a computer and disables all of the security cameras, bar the one watching Adrian sleep, and also disables the alarm system. Then, as she's about to leave, something catches her eye. A sealed room with a large frame seemingly holding nothingly. Some foreshadowing, methinks. She makes her way through the lavish house into the kitchen where she accidentally kicks a dog bowl across the floor. But a panic check of her phone reveals Adrian is still asleep. Phew. Cecilia now removes some clothes from her bag and hastily dresses. And once dressed, she heads down to the garage.
Yeah. So in the script here, Cecilia checks her phone while still in the kitchen just to see that Adrian is gone from the bed.
We haven't reached that panic point yet on screen, though. Instead, Cecilia makes it down to the garage where she is accosted by the lovely Zeus. But rather than alerting its master, the dog seems more intent on guilt tripping Cecilia for abandoning him. I feel that most days, Lee. She apologizes to Zeus for not being able to take him with her. And after a moment's emotional struggle, she removes its hefty electric shock collar before leaving.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great character beat. You could say it's her save the cat moment, despite it being a dog.
Yeah, yeah. Nice to see a dog being treated well, as well, Lee, as opposed to dying a terrible death, you know?
Oh, the
Uh,
movie's young.
that's right, yeah. I don't hold out hopes for Zeus, to be honest. And if we weren't already behind Cecilia and her desperate escape bid, we totally have her back now, right? Her good deed does backfire, though, as the dog backs into a sports car and sets off the most sensitive car alarm in history. And Stealth is well and truly out of the window at this point, and she bolts hell for leather across the massive lawn and scales the imposing yet surprisingly easily climbable security wall. Then she's into the adjacent forest and sprinting for the road, Lee.
Aye, so the script really punches you in the gut here as the poor dog desperately tries to escape with her, but it can't scale the perimeter fence and just barks desperately and pathetically as Cecilia flees.
Oh, I'm personally glad they dropped that, but any thoughts on why?
Well, I guess she would have gone from like the positive character beat of helping the dog to the negative beat of abandoning it in the space of a few heartbeats. So I suspect it may have soured the audience on Cecilia and her escape somewhat. Basically, I think it would have been a downer we didn't really need at that point.
Yeah, we just need to be behind Cecilia's attempt at this point, don't we?
Yeah.
So back on screen, and after a tense dash through a dark forest, our heroine arrives at the road, but whoever she's waiting for has yet to arrive, Lee. After a tense moment, headlights appear and Cecilia dashes for them. It's her sister Emily, and Cecilia bundles herself into the car, dropping the sleeping pills in her desperation. Now, as Emily demands to know what's going on, Adrian sprints from the darkness and starts hammering on the passenger window, screaming at Cecilia to get out. When she refuses, he punches through the windscreen to grab her, but thankfully, Emily steps on the gas and they're able to leave him in the dust. As they drive away, the dastardly Adrian spots the box of pills on the road and picks them up, Lee. And man, what a great opener this is, right?
Oh, I know, right? It's so, so good. And it does such a fantastic job of introducing the characters and planting seeds ready to ripen into payoffs later in the film. I love how up until Adrian arrives at the car, all we have seen of him is just a dude sleeping. But just through Cecilia's actions and the uses of mise-en-scene, we already know so much about him. The shock collar on the dog, the sterile living environment, the security cameras inside the house. It all works to build a picture of just a really unpleasant individual.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show how important kind of visual storytelling is when it
Hmm.
comes to screenwriting. That said, Lee, I'm not entirely sure a clean house is necessarily indicative of unpleasantness, but I take your point and won't argue that any further.
But it's not just clean though, dude. It's sterile. It's
I
like
know,
a
I know.
it's like a show home. The only room with any real character is the science lab, which I guess is like Adrian's version of a man cave.
Yeah, it is quite the soulless, lifeless kind of
Hmm.
abode, isn't it? Anyway, back in the film, and a handy little super informs us 2 weeks have passed.
In the script, we get a brief scene of Cecilia in a new place, a new bed. The floor creaks and she's up instantly, scanning the room nervously.
Now, on screen, we rejoin Cecilia as she stares through a window into the street and the everyday suburbia beyond. She's joined by James Lanier, played by Aldous Hodge, and we learn through some dialogue that he is a friend of her sister's who is putting her up for a while, and he encourages her to go and grab the mail from the box at the end of the lawn. But Cecilia is really scared. She does, however, agree to try. The way this sequence appears in the film is really clever. Everything is very loud, the creaking of the front door, the birds singing outside. But as soon as she sets foot outside, everything is really muffled and it's near silent. It's like she's underwater. Now, Cecilia, she makes it to the mailbox, but is startled by an incoming jogger and flees back to the house.
To be fair, that jogger did look shifty as fuck.
He did look shifty, didn't he? It's just credit to Whannell for shooting it in such a way. Thankfully, James is very supportive and reassures her that she's doing great.
Yeah. In the script, we are then joined by James's latest lady friend. Check it out.
Another woman, Annie, 34, strolls into the room, scratching at bed hair. She's wearing a cocktail dress like she just woke up from going out. Seems surprised by Cecilia's presence. Annie. Hey there. James. Annie, good morning. This is Cecilia. See, this is Annie. Cecilia. Hi, nice to meet you. Annie. You too. Cecilia. I'm gonna go and get Sydney up. Cecilia beats a quick exit. James talks fast. Maybe too fast. James. C is an old friend of mine. She's staying with me for a little bit while she gets back on her feet. I grew up with her and her sister. We went to the same school. She's been helping me with Sid, so it's been Annie. You don't have to explain anything, James. We've been on 2 dates. James. I know. Beat. Switches tack. So last night was fun. Annie. Yeah, it was. I'm gonna go home and get ready for work. James. Okay, cool. So give me a call. Let's do something next week or whenever you want. I'm not sure what the rules are here. Annie, aren't cops supposed to know all the rules? James, not this one. Annie, this cop or this rule? James, both. So why lose the lovely Annie from the film, Lee, do you think?
Well, I almost feel like her main purpose here is to iterate that James and Cecilia aren't an item and aren't being set up this way, you know. It does also throw in some pretty on the nose dialogue as exposition, and as we can tell from the fact that this scene is missing from the final film, we still get the gist of everything quite easily, quite clearly without it. It does lead to some great dialogue in the next scene, though, which is also missing from the film. It's in this scene in the script that we first meet James's daughter, Sydney, played by Storm Reed in the film. And here's that dialogue for you. Sydney, so did you get a good look at Dad's Tinder skank? Cecilia, Dad's Tinder skank. I'm confused. Is that a new band you like? Because I know a smart, awesome, modern young woman like you would never slut shame another woman with a term like that. Sydney, was she nasty? Cecilia, your dad would be the expert on this seemingly very nice person. Sydney, ah, I see. I'm picking up the code here. I'll tell him you didn't approve of her nasty ass. Cecilia, please don't. So obviously by losing the previous scene, we have to lose this one too, which is a shame because there are some really nice little character beats in there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, besides being amusing, it does illustrate the familiarity with Sydney, doesn't it? And possibly hints
Hmm.
at something approaching a theme, but it's gone, so we move on, Lee. Now, back on screen, we find Cecilia in the living room on her laptop, reading about how hackers can view your webcam, and she promptly paints over her webcam lens with nail polish. It's a cool little scene, almost a theme stated kind of moment, as it shows that she's afraid of Adrian watching her without her knowledge or consent. James is busy painting the house when someone arrives at the door, and it's Emily Lee. James is happy to see her, but Cecilia is freaking out, scared that Adrian might have followed her here and now knows where she is. After a few moments of desperately trying to get a word in, Emily blurts out that Adrian is dead and shows her the news article. Optics pioneer found dead from suicide.
In the script, James is not present for this scene from the outset, while on screen he makes himself scarce so the sisters can talk in privacy.
Yeah. And it's all too much for Cecilia to take in, and she shuts herself in the bathroom and tries to process the news. After a brief time out, she heads back to James and Emily. The three have a sit down conversation where Cecilia opens up about what actually happened between her and Adrian. And this is clearly the first time she's felt safe enough to really open up to her family and friends. She confesses how Adrian would control every aspect of her life and would become violent or worse when she displeased him. She says he wanted a baby, but she knew if she had one with him, she'd never be free. So she took birth control pills on the sly and concocted her escape plan.
In the script, this plays out a little differently. James is still not present, and when asked if Adrian would hit her, yeah, this is her reply. Cecilia, no, it was worse than that. He altered my reality. He lied to me so convincingly that I thought I was the crazy one. I believed I was a burden to him. I begged for his forgiveness and thanked him for putting up with little old worthless me.
Yeah, it's so tragic, isn't it? I mean,
Hmm.
it's interesting though. So why change him from a sort of psychological predator to a more physical one for the film, do you think?
Well, that's actually a really good question. I have a couple of views on this. First up, I think it's much easier for the audience to get behind a physical threat.
Mm.
Everybody understands and fears physical harm, but not everyone has experienced psychological abuse, so it might be harder for some people to comprehend. And secondly, as we'll find out in due course, if he wasn't physically violent before, he's damn sure changed his tune about that stance now. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you probably nailed it there, dude. I mean, I think the seeds of kind of physical violence need to be sown as they speak to sort of how Adrian behaves later in the film. So maybe that's sort of something to do with it. Anyway, it's a beautiful day outside. Positive, upbeat musically is kicking in, and Cecilia is headed out to the mailbox. Hell yeah, girl power. Now, back inside, James and his daughter Sydney are discussing colleges and life goals when a triumphant Cecilia hands over the mail. Her newfound confidence is quickly shaken when she receives a letter from Adrian's estate.
In the script, we get a brief scene before this one where Cecilia tells James and Sydney about Adrian's suicide.
And we get a beautiful establishing shot of the Golden Gate Bridge before we join Cecilia and Emily in Adrian's attorney's office. The attorney also happens to be Adrian's brother, and his name is Tom.
Ooh, awkward. We get a few preliminary scenes to this in the script of the sisters making their way through a packed street and setting up in the office before Tom's arrival, but nothing of any real interest is lost, though. But this office scene, though, is really good. There's some great character beats between Emily and Tom, and the scene plays out almost exactly as it does on the page. Check it out.
Tom, as the appointed attorney representing Adrian's discretionary trust, I'm required to enact his final wishes, and he stipulated that I do this in person. He wanted me to read a prepared statement. He clears his throat, prepares to fake the required solemnity. Tom continued. Cecilia, although our relationship was far from perfect, I at least thought we had built up enough trust that you would talk to me rather than running away from Emily. Nope, sorry, you're not allowed to do this. Tom, I'm required to read it. Emily, but we're not required to listen. Email me a copy. Tom, I'm not trying to upset either of you. I'm just doing my job. Emily, your job is to explain the money you mentioned on the phone. Tom, I mentioned that Cecilia specifically is named in Adrian's trust. Emily, and that's why we're sitting here. Tom, yes, for the same reason so many women in Adrian's life got close to him, his money. Emily, if there was a chance of physically being close to him, we wouldn't be here for any amount of money. Tom, you are physically close to him. He's in that urn behind you. With a hint of joy at the checkmate, Tom indicates a small urn near Emily. She is shocked into silence, which is rare for her.
Yeah, there's a really great little back and forth between the two different siblings, each of whom clearly stands on different sides of the fence. Emily is all about protecting her sister, and Tom is all about ensuring his brother's will is done. Each manages to get in little snipes at the other. Emily refusing to listen to Adrian's statement and stating no amount of money would get them close to Adrian. And then Tom sort of inferring that Cecilia was only after Adrian's money and then pointing out that they are in fact right next to Adrian, which in hindsight, who knows how true that statement actually was at the
Mm.
time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great scene. And it ends up with Cecilia being informed that Adrian has left her $5 million, Lee, to be paid out in monthly installments provided she meets basic criteria such as not committing a crime, etc. So it looks like things are finally looking up for the poor lass. And it's another great character beat in that the first thing she does is buy James a new ladder and open a bank account for Sydney with $10,000 in it so she can go to fashion school. As the three of them celebrate, we get a strange POV shot from the hallway of all three of them rejoicing.
Now, obviously, this film is called The Invisible Man, right? So no spoilers to say that there is an invisible man in it, And I read a really cool take on these POVs that we're not looking through the titular character's eyes, but rather standing behind him, watching them, which would explain why the POV is set so low.
Yeah, I love that idea. It makes the scene even creepier, right?
Oh, definitely, definitely. And from this point on, the camera work in the film becomes incredibly suggestive, dwelling on negative space to insinuate that something or someone may be lurking there. And I think one I was quoted as saying that if you think the Invisible Man is there in a shot, if it's suggested, then there's a very good chance that he is there. And we also get another scene on the page that didn't make it to the film. It's only a short one, but it kind of leans into the whole Cecilia and James hooking up notion again. Check it out.
Interior, Cecilia's bedroom, James's house, night. James and Cecilia wander into her room still laughing. They're both a bit drunk, especially Cecilia. James, was Emily a straight up bitch to him, even after she found out how much dough you were getting? Cecilia, yes, she's always been like that. The way she talks to servers in restaurants. Emily, impression. Could you not use Italian words? Just tell me what it actually is. James, that is eerie, girl. You're good. Cecilia, yeah, I used to be funny. James gazes around the room. Cecilia has brought a few more homely things into it, such as daisies in a vase. There are a few shopping bags lying around. James, look at this. You really brightened your little corner up. Did a little shopping, got some flowers. Cecilia, aware that it looks like she's staying forever. The reason I love daisies so much is that Adrian hated them. He was allergic. Beat. So much of my life has been wasted because of one relationship. I'm going to start sending my stuff out to some architecture firms again. Get back out there. There's a lull, and a suddenly apparent spark of romantic tension between them shows itself. James. All right, well, good night. He closes the door. Cecilia reaches into one of the shopping bags, holding up a dress. We pan away from her and examine the empty room behind her. We stay on it for a few beats, hearing something. It almost sounds like breathing. We pan back to Cecilia. Her back is to us, and then we hear a sniff, exactly like the one we heard from Adrian on the night Cecilia escaped. Cecilia whirls around and glares into the emptiness behind her. She knows that sound like she knows her own breathing. In an instant, she has gone from happy and light to uncomfortable and unnerved. She leaves her clothes and the light on and climbs onto the couch. Yeah, interesting. So we do get this last section of the scene on screen with Cecilia thinking she heard someone in the room, but it's interesting how the script was alluding to a relationship between the two.
Yeah, I mean, but it's low-hanging fruit in a way. Everyone's going to be expecting them to get together, and this poor girl is only a few weeks out of the most traumatic, abusive relationship imaginable. She ain't ready to be dating again for a long while. I do love the little anecdote in the script where we learn her favorite flowers are daisies because Adrian was allergic to them.
Yeah. So the next morning, Cecilia is cooking some bacon and eggs.
In the same pan.
Yeah.
Sorry, but do people seriously do that? I mean, for reals? Do you cook bacon and eggs in the same pan? Have I just been living under a rock all my life? Is this natural behavior? What?
well, well, I don't personally cook bacon and eggs in the same pan, but I think you can if you want, Lee, you know?
Fucking bacon and eggs in the same bloody pan.
If you couldn't tell, Lee is disgusted by this, folks. Absolutely disgusted. Anyway, this is the first scene where we, the audience, get definitive proof that something sinister is going on. So, as Cecilia leaves to get Sydney, first the knife is whisked away from the counter and vanishes. Then the stove is turned up to the max, causing the bacon and eggs
In the same pan.
in the same pan, Lee, to burst into flames. Now, thankfully, the ladies arrive on the scene to extinguish the blaze and they manage to laugh it off.
Yeah, I mean, was it just me or were your eyes on the corner by the fridge the entire time like mine?
Yeah, I mean, I was just waiting for something to move, but there was nothing, was there? So this is our first real scare since the opening scene, I think, and it clocks in at around the 26-minute mark.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much as it is on the page, except at the end of the scene, Cecilia realizes the knife is missing. And also, I just realized she is quite literally being gaslit in this scene.
Yeah, it's ingeniously.
You get it? Because gas lit, the gas is lit because she's being
Anyway, later that night, the sound of footsteps in the house sends Cecilia on a nervous hunt for the source. But again, there's nothing there.
in the script. This scene starts off very differently. Check it out.
Interior, Cecilia's bedroom, James's house, night. Cecilia pecks at her laptop, honing her resume, pen between her teeth, her back against a pile of pillows on the couch. We rack focus to the corner of the empty room behind her, watching it. We rack focus back to her. Cecilia suddenly stops, a chill running down her spine. She notices that her vase is now empty. The daisies are gone. A sound stabs out from behind her, the creak of wood, shifting weight. She turns to face the empty corner behind her. Nothing is there. She stares at the wall with the type of intense focus that people use to glare at magic eye paintings. We take it in from her POV, just an ordinary wall, until a figure briefly takes shape, as if the wall had become a 3D sculpture in the shape of a man. It's only there for a second and then it's gone. And then she hears footsteps coming from the hallway. Cecilia gets up and walks out into the hall. So that's interestingly. I mean, again, why do you think they remove these little touches from the film?
As much as I like the whole Daisy thing, we lost the scene where this was mentioned before, so it makes sense to lose it now, as it would have lost, the majority of its impact. As for the magic eye scene, I'd say this probably went because it would have massively lessened the impact of the film's big jump scare, which happens a little later in the film. I do like that whole kind of, if you can relax your eyes, you might be able to kind of catch a glimpse of the Invisible Man, that whole
Yeah.
magic eye thing. That's quite cool. That's quite clever, but I think they definitely made the right choice in taking that out.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I mean, we lost the setup with the daisies, didn't we? So we really, we can't really have the payoff. Yeah, I agree about the jump scare too. Yeah. So, finding nothing untoward in the house, Cecilia is unnerved to find the front door has opened somehow, and she tentatively heads outside into the bitter cold and surveys the surrounding street. And once again, there's nothing there, Lee. There's nada. Her breath ices the air, and behind her, seemingly from nowhere and unseen by her, a second exhalation of cold air appears just over her shoulder at the 31-minute and 30-second mark.
Such a brilliant scare as well. It's so subtle. There's no reaction from Cecilia, no musical stinger or camera push. It's just there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, after another moment, she heads back inside and locks the door behind her. But is she locking the danger out or locking herself in with it, Lee?
Who knows? There's a little more in the script as well. James wakes up and joins her as she re-enters the house, and they find that somebody has painted the letter C on the wall.
Yeah, I mean, that would ring some serious alarm bells, methinks, so I can see why that was cut. Things don't let up, though, as later that night, at the 32-minute and 30-second mark, Cecilia and Sydney are sleeping in the same bed when the duvet is slowly dragged off them, and the room lights up several times with what appears to be the flash of a camera or a cell phone, maybe. Cecilia wakes up and is startled to see someone standing at the foot of the bed. But no, wait, it's just one of Sydney's clothing mannequins.
Did you catch how it was dressed though? Big hat, big coat. I'll eat my hat if that is not a sly homage to the original Invisible Man and his classic, super well-known outfit.
I did see that, Lee. It was not lost on me. Very much appreciated. Now, Cecilia notices the duvet is gone and goes to retrieve it. The tension doesn't abate, though, as a creak from behind draws our eyes to impressions on a seemingly empty chair. She approaches it cautiously before tossing the duvet over the chair, and thankfully it's empty. We're still not done though, because as Cecilia drags the duvet back to the bed, it catches on something and she halts. She tugs hard, but it doesn't move, and it looks almost like someone is standing on it. Then footprints appear as an invisible figure steps toward her, and she freaks Lee. Sydney wakes up and James hurries into the room, but of course, there's nothing to see except a near hysterical woman and his terrified daughter. He reassures Cecilia that she's safe and to get some sleep before the big job interview she has tomorrow.
This whole scene is just an absolute masterwork of tension, and again, it's all in Whannell's subtle use of negative space. This scene itself doesn't appear in the script at this point, but it is used a little later on the page. But it's at this point now where every time we look at the screen, we're picturing where the goddamn invisible man might be hiding. Now, before the big interview in the script, we get a couple of extra scenes that didn't make it to the film. First, Cecilia is late because her phone alarm didn't go off. And a few beats later, we get this quite cool little moment. Have a listen. Cecilia dashes out of the kitchen. We hold on the room for beat in a wide shot. A very sharp eye would notice Cecilia's phone sliding off the kitchen counter. It's almost unnoticeable, but it happens. Cecilia scampers back in, styling her hair. She drains the coffee and zips up the folder, then whips around. Thankfully, James is there, though, to keep her calm and call an Uber, and then we're back in pace with the film.
Brilliant. And I'm sure the interview is going to go great. So a visibly nervous Cecilia chats with the head of an architecture company, and they seem to be hitting it off reasonably well. The guy seems sincere, if a little creepy, and asks to see Cecilia's work. But when she opens her folder, boom, it's empty, Lee. And at this point, Cecilia becomes increasingly flustered and eventually passes out. And we get this great pass out cam style shot, which follows her in extreme close up all the way to the floor. It's fantastic.
It is great. It's a really cool shot. And this scene is pretty much word for word as it is on the page.
James has joined Cecilia in the hospital now, where she's sent home by the doctor pending the results of a blood test. We do get a cool shot of a heavily bandaged patient, which is definitely a homage to the bandaged face of the original Invisible Man, I think.
Love it.
Back
Love
home,
it.
Cecilia is showering when her phone rings. She tells up to grab the phone, and it's the doctor who tells her that her fainting was the result of high diazepam in her system. As she struggles to understand this, she spots the diazepam bottle that she dropped the night of her escape, now perched on the corner of the sink, where it definitely was not a moment or two ago.
So I'm going to put the end of Act One here, but I really, really struggled with this one. It feels late in the film, but I just couldn't nail any other significant moments. You could make an argue for the earlier invisible intruder moments, I think, but to me, this felt a lot more concrete. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, this one was really difficult, wasn't it? I actually thought of I mean, I sort of actually had it or had Act One culminating in Cecilia and Emily's meeting with Tom.
Hmm.
I think that scene kind of puts the initial sort of Adrian saga to bed for a time, and Cecilia starts to feel free and is, using the money to help Sid and start her sort of life again. And then we move into the sort of Invisible Man, stalky kind of manipulation phase of the film. So yeah, that's kind of where I had it, but difficult
Hmm.
though.
Yeah, cool, man, cool. Anyway, this scene plays out very differently in the script, so have a listen.
Interior, shower, ensuite bathroom, James's house, day. Hot water soaks Cecilia's face from the shower head. She's out of focus in the foreground, the steam fogged glass in focus behind her. As she moves around in the shower, she intermittently obscures our view from the shower door. And then she moves back and we notice a clear handprint on the glass behind her. Cecilia notices it and stops, stares at it. She rotates the faucet and the water cuts out. She steps out of the shower, groping for a towel, nabs one and wraps it around her body, still staring at the handprint. She races out of the room. Interior, Cecilia's bedroom, James's house, night. Cecilia runs to her survival bag and ransacks it, locating a pair of gloves she stole from Adrian's house. Interior, ensuite bathroom, James's house, night. The handprint is fading, droplets of water running off it. Cecilia runs in and holds the left-hand glove up against it. It's a perfect match. A knock at the door. Cecilia spins, heart in her throat. James, off screen. Hospital's on the phone. You can pick it up in here. Interior, Cecilia's bedroom, James's house, night. Cecilia stumbles in and grabs the landline. Cecilia, this is Cecilia. Dr. Leigh, voiceover. Hi, this is Dr. Leigh at St. Vincent's. We've got the results of your blood test in, and it looks like the Valium was most likely the cause of your Cecilia. What Valium? Dr. Leigh, voiceover. Your blood work is showing a high amount of diazepam? That would definitely explain what happened to you. Cecilia, I don't have any Valium. Then something grabs her attention. Her facial expression tenses, her wide eyes fixed on something. There's an object sitting on the floor, a small orange bottle. Cecilia puts down the phone and steps towards it. With horror, she sees that it's the bottle of Valium diazepam, the same one she dropped the night she escaped from Adrian's. She picks it up and examines it. A telltale thumbprint of blood is smeared across the label. A familiar feeling of dread courses through her. Male voice off screen. Surprise. Cecilia whips round, jolting at the sound of the voice. Her blood freezes. She knows that voice. So there's a lot to talk about here, Leigh. As ever, I'm curious to to know why you think these aspects were removed from the film.
I think it just removes a lot of the mystery. I mean, we're all pretty convinced Adrian is somehow fucking with her, but we don't know that for sure, not yet. And I think once we know for sure, then a lot of that tension is going to vanish. Having his handprint and his voice pretty much confirms that he's going to be the one behind this, and just kind of completely removes that what if factor.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. Okay, so back on screen, Cecilia and James confront Tom in his office, where a near hysterical Cecilia lays it all bare. Leigh. She knows Adrian is alive, and through his groundbreaking work in optics has found a way to make himself invisible to torment her. Now, naturally, Tom and James find this concept a little hard to believe, but surprisingly, it is Tom who proves the sympathetic ear, telling her that he hated Adrian as much as she did, and that he controlled him long before he controlled her. He then shows her the crime scene photos of Adrian's corpse, and this seemingly pacifies her for the moment at least.
Yeah, I mean there are some dialogue changes here, some specific references to the scripted version of the shower scene, but the overall context of the scene pretty much remains the same.
Yeah, now still distraught Cecilia pays Emily a visit, but to say her big sister isn't pleased to see her would be an understatement. It seems she received an email from Cecilia that morning that basically ripped into her, and now she wants nothing more to do with her sister, despite Cecilia's tearful pleas.
Now, in the script, this scene doesn't occur for about another 6 pages. In its place, the scene in the lawyer's office is followed by a phone call between Emily and Cecilia, where they agree to meet for dinner. That is then followed by this scene.
Interior, Cecilia's bedroom, James's house, night. Cecilia skims through her meagre suitcase of clothes, grows frustrated. Cecilia, where have all my clothes gone? Then she hears it, breathing. It's very low, but it's undeniable. It quivers, lustful. Cecilia whirls around. She bolts for the door to her room, wrenching the handle. It doesn't give. The door is locked. Cecilia continued, What? She yanks the door brutally. Nothing. Cecilia continued, Hello? Help! She pounds on the door. No response. She's alone. She turns and faces the room, closes her eyes, opens her eyes with a new fight in them. There are no other sounds in the room. She stalks forward, listening. As she reaches the center of the room, the breathing becomes apparent again. Cecilia steps towards the sound, honing in on it. Another step. The panting. The presence of another human being. It has more clarity now. A floorboard creaks. Cecilia glares down at her own feet. They don't budge. Wide-eyed in terror, Cecilia moves towards the sound. She zeroes in on one corner of the room. She reaches out as if she's about to touch someone. The breathing suddenly stops. Her probing fingers reach the wall. Nothing is there. Cecilia backs up, staring all around her. She keeps backing up until she hits the opposite wall. She sinks to the floor, watching the empty room in front of her.
And this scene is then followed by an iteration of the scene where the girls are asleep, the covers are pulled off, and somebody photographs them in their sleep. Only this time, Cecilia awakes to see the phone floating above them, and once again calls for increasingly exasperated James, who again finds nothing untoward in the room. And then we are back up to speed with the film as we have the written version of the scene where Emily and Cecilia have their falling out confrontation.
Nice. Now, following that scene on screen, Cecilia returns home and checks her laptop and finds the incriminating email was indeed sent from her computer. We only get snippets of it, but it definitely looks like a nuclear relationship bomb, and a distraught Cecilia collapses on the floor in tears. And it's in this state that she's found by Sydney, who, ever the good kid, offers the prospect of a girly night in to cheer her up. And it seems like this may be just what Cecilia needs when, bam! Poor Sydney is punched in the face and sent reelingly. Not seeing anyone else in the room, she screams for her dad, who, to his credit, still keeps his cool and ushers the hysterical girl out of the house to take her to stay with family. Cecilia has had enough now. She scatters coffee grounds on the floor, backs herself into a corner armed with a knife, and waits.
Yeah, I mean this is set up slightly differently in the script. In the script, Cecilia enters Sydney's room to talk to her when the kid is basically punched in the face. But otherwise, it plays out almost exactly the same.
Yeah. So after opening her heart and questioning Adrian, who may or may not be in the room with her, an idea sparks in her head. She grabs the nearby house phone and dials a number. Almost immediately, we hear the telltale vibration of a smartphone, but it's coming from above her, Leigh, in the attic. A voicemail kicks in, and it is indeed Adrian's phone she's called. And cue spooky attic sequence, Leigh, because it does seem as though the phone is indeed up in the spooky attic.
See, I actually thought the attic, as horror movies go, was decidedly less creepy than it could have been. There's a small change in the script here, as on the page, she calls her own phone number because her phone went missing earlier, and it's her cell phone that starts ringing from upstairs. And personally, I kind of like this better because I refuse to believe that someone smart enough to invent an invisibility suit wouldn't think to completely silence his phone.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. And it's not that spooky an attic, is it? It's very functional up there.
Hmm.
So, using the new ladder, Cecilia climbs into the attic, equipped with a flashlight and the house phone. Now, as you'd expect, it's dark, a little creepy, but not too creepy. But it seems deserted, save for the usual junk and some half empty paint cans.
Yeah, mate, if Sinister taught me anything, it's that attics are to be avoided like the plague.
Quietly. Okay, so Cecilia locates Adrian's phone and unlocks it to see the photos of her and Sydney sleeping. How sinister is that? She also finds keys, the missing kitchen knife, all bagged up and sealed, along with her architecture drawings and a stash of protein shakes. Little slice of manosphere heaven up there, isn't it, Lee?
Indeed. In the script, there's a little more up there. Cecilia's missing clothes, and there's a hole drilled in the ceiling above her bed. There's also a tablet which, when turned on, reveals hidden cameras all throughout the house.
Grade A creep right there.
Yeah.
Then the phone rings. It's a text from an unknown number with a single word, Lee. Surprise. Then the stepladder creaks. Oh no. Cecilia bolts for it and stares through the attic hatch, but as expected, we see nothing. But our heroine is nothing if not resourceful, and she dumps a can of paint through the hatch, and it splatters over a bizarre humanoid figure in an absolutely fantastic jump scare that hits around the 56-minute and 30-second mark.
Man, what a cracker of a jump scare. I actually saw this one in the cinema when it first came out, and let me tell you, hand on heart, not a single butt remained in its seat for this scene. And I'll,
Nice.
I'll always I'll always remember it because as soon as the scare was done, the whole cinema laughed. Not in a kind of like, oh, that was funny, but it kind of like a mass tension relief kind of way. And it was an awesome, awesome cinematic moment.
Oh, that's amazing, dude. The magic of cinema. You can't beat it,
Yeah.
right? So Cecilia drops from the attic, armed with a knife, and follows the trail of paint until it vanishes. A car screeches past the window, and then a tap in the kitchen turns on. Cecilia moves carefully towards the sound, and by the sink, there's a brief, almost unnoticeable shimmer in the air. The sink is full of paint, and as soon as Cecilia turns off the tap, she is attacked by an unseen force, lifting her off the ground at around the 58-minute 30-second point. And what follows is a brutal confrontation between her and her unseen attacker as he chokes her and throws her around the room until finally she's able to make it to the front door and escape into the night. Oh, hello, Lee. I know what that noise is. It's time for another random page check. We're enjoying this now, aren't we?
Ah, fantastic. So, basic screenwriting law tells us that one page basically equals 1 minute in the film. Now, obviously, this isn't always the case. So, let's check in on the minute count and the script page, and we'll see just how well this holds true for The Invisible Man.
Nice. Far away, dude.
Okay, so we are at just over the 1 hour mark on the film, and we are on page 61 of the script.
Oh, bang on, dude.
Yeah, bang on indeed. Now we've lost a couple of minor scenes and dialogue snippets throughout the film, but I'd say this is a good, pretty much exemplar of the rule.
Yeah, totally agree.
Interesting couple of bits from the script here as well. Let me read you this little extract first. She turns and faces the empty kitchen, a tense weight. Her head kicks back violently as something grasps her throat. She is lifted into the air and held there, suspended in midair like a marionette. She struggles to force the blade towards her transparent attacker, but something is stopping her. Her hand twists at the wrist and she drops the knife with a howl of pain. The invisible man drives her backwards. She hits the wall with such force that a grunt of air is socked out of her, her body collapsing into the tiled floor. The knife is punted away by an invisible foot. Now, I found this noteworthy, and this is from page 59 of the script, and it's the first time that Whannell actually refers to the Invisible Man by name.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's obviously a conscious choice by Whannell to first introduce the character by name here. So why sort of wait until this specific moment, do you think?
I think because now we know, 100% that it is an invisible man stalking her. No pun intended, but we've seen it now. The cat's out of the bag, so now it's time to fully nail down these villainous acts to a specific antagonist.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. So Cecilia calls an Uber and heads straight for Adrian's house. And it seems like he hasn't changed the security codes as she's able to waltz right in.
There's also an interesting snippet of dialogue from the Uber driver that wasn't in the film. The driver turns around to face her. Lyft driver. If you don't mind me saying, you seem so unhappy. A beautiful woman like you shouldn't have anything to be unhappy about. That's the way I look at it. Cecilia registers his voice somewhere in the fog of her mind. Cecilia, absent. Thank you. See, I point this out because this is the second time a bit part character has commented on Cecilia and her looks in that way. The other being the head of the architecture firm during the job interview. And I just wondered, is there a deeper commentary in here? And I just wondered what you thought about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think almost certainly there is. I mean, it could be, it could be sort of interpreted several ways. I think it could be sort of just a comment about superficiality, in men, and to a certain degree.
Hmm.
Could be a comment on how women are perceived by men, or it could be hinting at, how the problems women face can be, kind of invisible to men because they're so, or we're so blinded by, how they look, maybe. I don't know. Do you have any? I certainly think it's intentional, but did you have any thoughts?
Hmm. Yeah, I kind of like that idea, that men are always distracted by appearance. I kind of put it down to how guys always assume that certain women have, for lack of a better term, pretty privilege. I.e., if they are attractive, they have little to worry about in life.
Mm.
That was my kind of take on it, but definitely, definitely interesting to think about. And also, there is an absolutely brilliant line in the script describing Adrian's house from outside, which goes like this. The modernist cube at the end of the drive is not so much a house as a statement. It says, I don't have normal problems. And I thought that is a fucking A plus line there. You know, it
Mm,
describes the building perfectly in our minds. And it just makes us hate Adrian that little bit more.
yeah, it's so good, isn't it?
Mm.
So Cecilia makes her way inside, and the place is somehow even more sterile than before. The artwork has been removed, and the furniture is wrapped in plastic sheeting. And I have to say, Lee, Moss is so good here. I mean, she's been an absolute powerhouse all the way through the film, but the sheer terror and panic she's hiding just beneath the surface as she explores her old home is just phenomenal, right? Now, at this point, she's discovered by the lovely Zeus the Doberman, who hopefully is being fed and looked after. The dog is happy to see her and accompanies her on her exploration. Yeah, surprised he's not dead, to be honest, Lee. I thought he would have copped it by now, but no. Anyway, she makes her way into the Iron Man style basement science workshop.
I love the fact that Zeus is too scared to enter and just kind of stands whining at the door. You know, it says a lot about the fear he has of his master and has obviously been trained to stay out of Adrian's workspace.
Oh, bless him. He's a good boy. Hopefully, he won't be abandoned this time. So she makes her way to the seemingly empty chamber we glimpsed during her frenetic escape, and after a few failed attempts, she guesses the access code as the day they first met. She enters and discovers what has long been suspected, an invisibility suit made up of hundreds of tiny cameras and holographic projectors. She removes it from the mannequin just as Zeus kicks off barking, and someone else has arrived, Lee.
I love this whole invisibility suit concept because it completely bypasses the normal discrepancies with invisibility.
Interesting. What are the normal discrepancies with invisibility, Lee?
Okay, so I have a little bit of an optics background, kind of like the very bottom of the scale that Adrian is on. And the reason normal invisibility would suck is because if you yourself were completely invisible, you would also be blind because basic vision, what we see is basically light hitting the back of our eye and being translated into signals by our brain. Now, if you are completely transparent, that light will pass right through your eye. Thus, there's nothing for your brain to register. So the suit works differently, obviously, by basically using cameras and projectors to perfectly copy the image on both sides of you, thus rendering you unseeable. But you can be sure those little cameras have a feed directly to Adrian's visuals, so he can see perfectly, probably in a 360-degree plane if he wanted to. And I think it also seems to enhance his strength by the way he's lobbing poor Cecilia around like a rag doll.
Yeah, yeah, some interesting points there, Lee. Maybe we should start a science podcast where, Lee
I think that's
explains
the
it all.
He
Optics
explains it
with
all. I
Lee.
like it. I like it. Yeah, that's pretty much the extent of my knowledge. So
Well,
I can fit a good pair of varifocals, but that's about it.
yeah.
Also, I would wager money that anyone with trypophobia is going to have a really hard time dealing with that suit. Trypophobia, for anyone that don't know, is like a fear of holes, like lots of like small holes.
Yeah, hexagonal kind of, holes like a beehive sort of thing.
Yeah, and it does have that kind of
It
creepy
has that
holy
look about
effect,
it,
I
doesn't it?
think. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it's safe to say Adrian doesn't have an issue with that. Now, poor Cecilia flees to the bedroom and stashes the suit in the vent where she concealed her bug out bag, only to find herself trapped. She can hear footsteps approaching and conceals herself as best she can behind the door, which ominously begins to slide openly. Her eyes are on the floor, and as soon as a footprint appears on the carpet, she blasts into the invisible man and sprints for it. Zeus then leaps between them. Zeus to the rescue, Lee. Come on, buying her valuable time to escape. And escape she does, Lee. Back into the waiting Uber, and they speed off to a temporary safety. And once again, poor Zeus is abandoned to his, his master's wrath. What the fuck?
It's at this point I'm really hoping the Invisible Man is a very like strong dog person. You know?
Oh, me too. But to be honest, Lee, I'm not holding up much hope for that. As we all know, Lee, horror hates dogs.
Yeah.
So Cecilia calls Emily and arranges to meet her in a restaurant. Things are a little frosty between them, but Emily is won over by Cecilia's sincerity and listens intently as her sister tries to explain Adrian's suit. Emily is momentarily distracted by something just off screen. We see she's looking at that familiar kitchen knife floating beside Cecilia's head. What the fuck's going on? What happens next is over in seconds. Emily's throat is slashed by the floating knife, which is then slapped into a dumbstruck Cecilia's hand. And holy fucking shit, dude, this came out of nowhere, hitting like a sledgehammer at the 1 hour, 12-minute mark.
I know, man. It's a tad late in the movie for a face punch, but that's exactly what this is. And there's some really, really wonderful writing in the script here. So check out how the immediate aftermath is handled on the page, and it plays out the same on screen too.
Emily can't speak, coughs out one last protest before gripping her neck. The knife smacks into Cecilia's hand before she has time to register any of this. And then the screaming starts. A woman at the next table lets out a high-pitched shriek so piercing that the entire room whips their eyes onto her. The picture everyone sees is Cecilia holding a bloody knife as Emily's body collapses forward, passing out quickly as blood soaks the white tablecloth. Cecilia stares at the knife with total delirium, dropping it and matching the original scream with one of her own. The other patrons blanch until a waiter tackles Cecilia. She fights against him with animal strength. What we witness is someone's sanity disappearing in an instant. Imagine watching your child fall off a cliff and your reaction. That's where we are with Cecilia. She screams from somewhere deep within her. She is broken. Time, space, and sound fracture here. We're in sync with Cecilia. Close on Cecilia's face, pressed against the floor, we see flashes of police jackets, of Cecilia's hands being cuffed. She is pulled upwards, then darkness. Yes, I mean, it's brutal, isn't it, dude?
Absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because we have some classic little formatting tricks here. You know, the line, "What we witness is someone's sanity disappearing in an instant," is underlined, to bring it really bring it home. And a few lines later, we get time, space, and sound fracture here, which is all written in uppercase. Which is it's basic formatting sort of like tricks, but it really does sort of draw your eye to that on the page and just kind of emphasize the gravitas of those lines.
Mm.
And one last thing I found really, really great and interesting here is Whannell's use of a tactile example. The line, "Imagine watching your child fall off of a cliff and your reaction." That's where we are with Cecilia. And what a great note that must be to get as an actor, and for a reader as well. It just puts us perfectly in Cecilia's fracturing headspace. It's just so good.
It's so well written, isn't it? Now,
Mm.
unsurprisingly, the poor woman is carted off to the nearest psychiatric facility where she's taken to a holding cell, strapped down and sedated. Now she screams that Adrian's in the room, invisible in the corner, and maybe he is, but understandably, the psych team are not buying it. After they leave the room and she starts to slip into unconsciousness, she hears a voice say, "Surprise." Now, I wasn't clear if she was imagining this or if Adrian, really was in the room with her.
I mean, that line isn't in the script. Instead, she hears footsteps as she passes out, which may be coming from inside or outside the room. I watched and listened to this scene a few times. I'm still not 100% clear, but my gut is going with, he actually was there in the room.
Yeah, that's my instinct too on this one, dude. I thought. So we rejoin a spaced out Cecilia in an interrogation room where she's being questioned by James and another detective. She tells them that the man who killed her sister is in the room with them right now, but that they can't see him.
Yeah. In other words, she's trying to book a one-way ticket to Crazy Town.
It's not looking good for her, to be sure.
Yeah.
She tries to tell James about the suit, but holds off. She doesn't want Adrian, who may or may not be in the room, to know that she's stashed it. There's a nice little character moment for James here where he apologizes for leaving her when she needed him.
Yeah, that's not in the script. Instead, we get a super brief conversation outside the room between the two cops, where James insinuates that he is hoping an insanity plea will be Cecilia's best option.
Yeah, now poor Cecilia is pretty much a broken shell at this point. She has a meeting with a staff nurse who informs her that she is pregnant, much to a distraught Cecilia's shock and denial. There's no time to process this, though, as in the next scene, she's bustled into a meeting with Tom, who informs her that due to her current status as, well, an insane murderess, the payout from Adrian's trust will cease.
God damn small print clauses.
You know, right? It's always in the fine print with these fucks. She manages to reel out one sick ass burn, though, as she calls Tom the jellyfish version of Adrian, everything but the spine, Lee. Cecilia is still reeling when Tom leans in and whispers that if she agrees to have the baby and go back to Adrian, he can make all of this go away and she can return to her old life. He tells her that Adrian swapped out her birth control pills ages ago and that she's been punished enough and he's ready to forgive her. All she has to do is call him on the provided cell phone. Now, this latest revelation provokes a violent outburst from Cecilia, who hurls the papers and the phone onto the ground. Tom is nonplussed and says he'll be back in 3 days, but unbeknownst to him, Cecilia has swiped a pen from his briefcase. After he leaves, she steals a wad of blue tack from the table and listens to the local weather report, and it seems a storm is coming, Lee.
Metaphor.
Indeed.
In the script, we don't see her take the pen, and the weather report is a couple of scenes later.
Yeah, it makes sense to compress it all down, I think.
Yeah, agreed, absolutely.
So next time we see Cecilia, the aforementioned storm has arrived and the guard searches her and her room for contraband before leaving her to sleep. As soon as she is alone, she retrieves the fountain pen she'd stashed in the shower cubicle and turns on the shower. She puts the pen to her wrist and tells Adrian he won't get the baby and he won't get her. Then she starts cuttingly at the 1 hour, 26 minute, 30 second mark. She doesn't get far as something grabs her wrists, but rather than fear, there's triumph in her eyes. There you are, she curses before stabbing the invisible man repeatedly with a pen, causing his suit to malfunction and glitch out. The two struggle, and she's thrown across the room just before a guard storms in and orders her back to bed. No more hiding for our invisible stalker, though, as the guard sees him and pulls his taser, which is promptly removed from his grip and shoved under his chin, dropping him hard. Cecilia flees into the hallway, where she's promptly grabbed by two more guards who drag her back towards her cell.
Man, I am getting some serious Terminator 2 vibes here. And incidentally, I put the start of Act 3 here. You know, Cecilia's gone from victim to aggressor, and this kind of kickstarts the final act.
Yeah, interesting. I actually put the start of Act 3 when she stole the pen,
Hmm.
just because I think, that's when she has a plan and she starts to sort of really go on the offensive. Uh,
Nice, nice. But there's a great little bit of action in the script here. Let me read you these couple of lines. Cecilia skids on the slick linoleum, dog paddling desperately to her feet. She whams into two guards who grapple her as an aggressor. And I think that's just a example of brilliant, it's just brilliant word choice, and another example of how great Whannell is at writing vivid description without using massive text dumps.
yeah. It's really sort of subliminally hints at the change, in Cecilia's mindset too, right?
Mm.
I think it's really great. Anyway, the two guards are also quickly taken down by the Invisible Man, only for three more to charge into the fray, only to be brutally dispatched by their unseen assailant. At this point, two more guards come running into.
Okay, come on, guys. This is starting to feel like the Keystone Cops here. I mean, you ever you ever play a video game where the AI is so bad the enemies just keep sprinting into your line of fire mindlessly until they're all dead? This is the vibe I'm getting from these guys. I think Adrian is just farming XP at this point.
To be honest, Lee, that sounds like the kind of game I enjoy, where they're just running into your line of fire. You don't need to move. Perfect. Okay, to be fair though, I doubt their training covers this scenario. You know, Unsurprisingly though, these are two fare no better, and the score is Guard 0, Invisible Man 8.
I love how Adrian taunts the last guard, seemingly sparing and then just like shooting him in the back. What a dick move that
Oh,
was.
total dick move, isn't it? A wounded Adrian flees through the nearby fire exit, but Cecilia snatches up a gun and is in hot pursuit. And this girl is well and truly done being a victim, Lee. She almost tags a glitching Adrian in the stairwell, but he manages to escape outside into the downpour. But our girl is still in hot pursuit, Lee. She spots him glitching near some cars and takes another shot, but it doesn't look like she's hit anything. We get a three-way game of cat and mouse here as Cecilia hunts Adrian through the car park while being hunted in turn by more security guards from the hospital. He manages to get the drop on Cecilia yet again and tells her that if she tries to fight him, he won't ever hurt her but target people she loves. He then straight up announces that he's off to kill Sydney. And at this point, another guard arrives and Adrian shoots him, injuring him. But in a strange turn, he spares this guard. And this seems like odd behavior because now there's at least one witness to corroborate Cecilia's story. Maybe the genius is slipping, Lee?
I don't know. Don't count on it, dude. This guy always seems to be one step ahead.
Okay. So Adrian escapes the compound, followed closely by Cecilia. He tears away in his car, but Cecilia knows he won't hit her, so she positions herself dead on and takes a shot. The car swerves to avoid her, causing another incoming car to crash. And wasting no time, Cecilia steals the crash car and calls James to warn him about Sydney's impending danger.
Did you notice Billy the puppet from Saw is graffitied on the wall here?
I did not actually notice
Oh,
that, Lee. Nice little nod for those in the know, though,
hmm.
right? So it looks like help may be late in coming as we arrive at James's house and the invisible man lets himself in through the back door and stalks through the house at the 1 hour 36 minute mark.
And again, this is one of those looks like a POV, but is actually a tracking shot. I mean, you see how far back we are when the door to Sydney's room opens. You know, we're behind him watching the voyeur instead of watching through his eyes. And it's still, again, I just love that. I think that's so good.
Yeah. The invisible man enters Sydney's room and it seems he's fixed his suit because it's no longer glitching out. The girl wakes and senses something is wrong and fishes her pepper spray out of her school bag. And after a moment of listening, she sprays it wildly in front of her, causing the unseen form to splutter and crash into her desk.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this for a bit, and initially I was like, what's that going to do? His eyes are packed away beneath a thick, skin-tight suit. And then I sort of Googled how pepper spray works, and yeah, if you inhale that shit, it's not going to do you a lot of good. But then I was like, so the suit clearly doesn't have room for oxygen storage. There are no visible breathing holes, so it must have some kind of respiratory function. And if that shit isn't heavily filtered, then I guess that pepper spray is going straight up his nose or down his throat. So anyway, too long, didn't read. Yeah, this would probably work, and it does work. Also, note what Sydney's wearing here because this is a great little moment of foreshadowing.
Yeah, a nightshirt with a jellyfish on it. Okay, pay attention. So Sydney dashes from her room, but the invisible man has somehow beaten her out of the room and she runs straight into him, knocking her down as he starts to strangle her.
In the script, the Invisible Man actually ties a wire across the corridor as a trap before entering her room, kind of like a murderous Kevin McAllister. And it's this that poleaxes Sydney to the ground.
Just then, James arrives and he's all business, Lee, gun drawn and looking buff as fuck.
I mean, seriously, could that guy fit into a tighter shirt?
Don't tell me if you look like Aldous Hodge, you wouldn't be rocking a tighty muscle shirt, Lee.
Dude, if I looked as good as Aldous Hodge, I would spray my shirts on.
The delectably buff James arrives to save his daughter, but then gets the absolute shit kicked out of him by the invisible man. Things are looking grim when Cecilia arrives and blasts the unseen attacker with a fire extinguisher, revealing him for all to see.
Well, 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 if it ain't the invisible cunt.
Sorry.
Not a fan of the boys?
I watched the first season, but to be honest, I've heard a lot of disappointment over the final season.
Yeah, the final season could definitely have been better.
Okay, how would you improve it, Lee?
Oh, dude, I don't have the time to list my thoughts on the final season, but I think the biggest change I would do, I'd probably drop the episode count down to 6 and sunk that extra 2 episode budget into going full scorched earth in the finale. But what do I know? We're all a slave to the studio, right?
Hmm.
Anyway,
Okay, anyway, back to the film. And with the aforementioned invisible cunt now, a very visible cunt, Cecilia puts 4 rounds in the murderous fuck's chest. He staggers and goes down, and a triumphant Cecilia unmasks him to reveal Tom.
Jinkies.
I see now. Jellyfish nightshirt, jellyfish version of Adrian.
Ah, see, pretty cool, huh?
Oh, Leigh Whannell, you little genius, you. In the next scene, we find an armed SWAT team sweeping Adrian's house. From the basement, they hear a muffled cry for help and break down a flimsy looking wall and find a bedraggled looking Adrian, bloody and malnourished, chained to the wall. Come on, man. There's no way it was fucking Tom this whole time.
Looks like it.
Major rug pull, dude. So James, Cecilia, and Sydney regroup at the police station, and it seems like everybody is buying the story of Tom's guilt, save for Cecilia. Even James is convinced of it, and you'd think he'd learned to trust her instincts by now. It seems they have a weird suit that doesn't work and a bunch of corroborative witnesses, and that is going to be enough to get Cecilia off the hook if she goes along with it, which it seems is what she does, as in the next scene, she's back at James's house watching over Sydney as she sleeps. And after a few moments, she gets up, heads outside, and calls Adrian.
So in the script, this conversation between them runs a little bit longer, and it's revealed that James is with her and is fitting her with a good old police issue wire microphone.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that would have given the game away a little early.
Yeah.
I certainly think it's better keeping Cecilia's motivations in the dark for the moment. She meets Adrian, looking as glammed up as we've seen her, and Adrian is playing the nervous suitor very well. And as the two sit down for a very awkward dinner, Cecilia takes careful note of the cameras watching their every move.
In the script, Cecilia insists that they swap seats, so the camera is on Adrian and not on her.
Mm. She continually implores Adrian to confess, saying that their new life together can't be built on a lie, but either he ain't buying it or he's telling the truth because he's not budging on his story. We briefly cut away to James listening in a car nearby, and he is itching for that confession as much as she is. She starts to cry, and he moves to console her, whispering that he knows her better than anyone, and that shouldn't come as a surprise. Oh, this bastard. The insinuation on that last word, the word he whispered to her and texted her, is all the proof she needs, Lee. She breaks down in tears and excuses herself to the bathroom and calms herself in front of the massive bathroom mirror. Meanwhile, Adrian sits smugly at the table, enjoying his meal when he jerks suddenly. And fear is in his eyes, Lee, as he viciously slits his own throat almost to the bone. He collapses to the floor, and it's all caught on camera, Lee. Now, a minute later, Cecilia returns and screams at the sight before her. She dials 911 and hurries to James's side, hysterical and distraught. Slowly, though, she backs away, screaming the address down the phone before hanging up. And the second she is out of view of the camera, her demeanor completely shifts. She's cold and calculating, and she takes a seat on the steps and watches him slowly bleed out. Surprise. By the time James, oh yeah, by the time James arrives, Cecilia's already leaving. The suit she stashed earlier in a carryall, and Zeus by her side. Come on, Zeus, love it. The big man is clearly unnerved by what she has apparently done, but he still has her back and agrees that he obviously committed suicide. It's obvious. The cameras caught it all.
Obvious. Yep.
Cecilia thanks him and leaves to start a new life. Finally, finally free of fear.
So come on, man, what did you think of this one?
Yeah, man. I thought this one was really, really good. I mean, I thought it was really a well crafted film, some really great use of cinema and cinematic language to sort of accentuate the tension and fear. I thought the characters were all pretty interesting and were played for the most part in a very naturalistic way, which is interesting and I thought was cool. And yeah, I mean, I thought props to Elizabeth Moss because I mean, she just gives a truly outstanding performance in this film. She's the heart and soul of this film and is carrying the whole thing. It's such an amazing performance, I think.
Yeah, totally agree, man. I mean, I think this is a complete masterful work. It's so rich on theme and subtext, and I can't wait to really kind of dig into it in the breakdown. It's also a really great shift from 1L. I mean, I think after such rip-roaring rides like Saw and Insidious, and this is such an understated film. And it just goes to show what a versatile talent he is and why he is one of the biggest and most important names in horror today. But I like yourself, I've also really got to sing Elizabeth Moss's praise here too. You're probably going to roll your eyes, but I think this was an Oscar-worthy performance. I think if this had been a straight-up drama film or thriller, she would have bagged it. But because it's just, regarded probably as a silly horror movie, nothing. It is generally one of the greatest acting performances I've ever seen. It's raw, it's heartbreaking, and it is 100% believable.
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. And surprisingly, Lee, the dog survived. Zeus survived, dude. So I think maybe this is a personal drama. No, no, I'm only joking. Deep cuts. Okay, let's break this baby down, Lee. Okay, so let's begin the breakdown by looking at the most significant differences, if there were any, between the screenplay and the film.
So there have been a few slight differences. Some scenes have been cut or rearranged in the timeline, but nothing hugely significant to the plot. I think the main general difference in the script is that we get a lot more proof that Adrian is the Invisible Man. We hear him speak more. We get the scene with Cecilia matching his handprint to the glove she stole, etc. And I think this was obviously changed for the film because they wanted people to be rocked by that final twist with the reveal of Tom in a suit, and that's kind of pointless if there is absolutely no credibility to that at all, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very clear from from the script that Adrian is the Invisible Man, and we may have a sort of difference of opinion here, but I did think it was fairly clear in the film too, or certainly the film
Hmm.
definitely leads the audience to believe Adrian is in the suit, which is why the Tom rug pull works so effectively, I think. I mean, my take on why some of the Adrian in the suit clues were left out of the film is maybe to lead the audience to doubt Cecilia's sanity more, in a very sort of similar way to the manner in which, many of the characters around Cecilia do. Yeah, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a pretty good point. But let's be real here. No intelligent viewer is going to be doubting Cecilia's sanity here, even from the outset. It's the promise of the premise and all that. The Invisible Man. I think you've kind of nailed the point though, in that it has to be believable that those around Cecilia will think she's going crazy. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes total sense. Okay, so let's look at our characters. Are there any introductions that stood out to you as particularly effective or memorable?
Okay, for me, and this is really late in the game, coming in on page 97, but it has to be Adrian's introduction. It feels weird having an introduction to a character so late in the film, especially one who's already played such a huge part in the film without hardly ever appearing in it. The description goes like this. Adrian is standing there in front of her. There is a supreme natural confidence in everything he does. The way he opens the door appears to be the most efficient way to open a door. The way he smiles appears to be the most efficient way to smile. If you are in his presence, you are inefficient, inferior. What was yours?
Oh, dude, we're on the same page on so many of these things because when I read through the script, I actually picked this one out too, just because it's great. I mean, it's such a great character intro. But to be different, I did pick out James's intro, which I thought was really, really good. So this is how James is introduced in the script. She jolts out of her daze as a handsome African American man approaches. This is James Lanier, 34. Thinks before he talks, appears outwardly relaxed, but he's intensely studying and taking in everything around him. He rubs his eyes, yawning. So I picked this one out as well because I thought it was just such a wonderfully kind of succinct yet highly kind of effective way of introducing a character whose profession is a police detective, I mean, Whannell references James thinking before he talks, his outwardly relaxed appearance, but that he's taking everything in around him. I thought this painted just such a beautiful picture, of a guy whose watchfulness and kind of studiousness is inculcated by his profession and training. and the described mannerisms really reflect fantastically well who James is, through his demeanor and his actions. And it's just such a great introduction for an actor. We talk about this a lot, but for an actor to sort of latch onto and really sort of
Mm,
build a character around, I
yeah.
think it's absolutely fantastic. Okay, so before we break down the scarology, did you have a scariest moment, Lee?
Well, the tick jump scare definitely freaked me out the most on first watch, but on rewatching the film, I felt nothing at that point. With forewarning, to me, it lost a lot of its power,
Yeah.
like a lot of jump scares do. But I was, however, still quite unnerved during the stalking scenes, and the one that got me the most was when the Invisible Man stands on the sheet that Cecilia is trying to drag. I thought that was creepy as fuck. I still think that is creepy as fuck. But what freaked you out the most?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was a really good one, I thought. But for me, it was Emily's death scene. And for the death to a certain degree, but not really. I mean, it was more, I think, just Moss's reaction here is,
Mm,
I mean, she is so unbelievably good in that scene. And you see the horror and the pain and the shock in her face. It's a truly kind of haunting piece of acting, which I thought was, for me, I thought was the most powerful moment in the film, and probably the most traumatic as well to watch.
mm,
But it's all Moss, right? She is just
mm,
sensational in throughout the film, but definitely in that
mm.
moment as well. It's spellbinding performance, I think. Alrighty then. So let's talk about the scarology. So first of all, yes or no, Lee, does the film more or less conform to the 10-minute rule?
I'm going to say yes, but with a small caveat.
Nice. Okay, break it down for us, dude.
Okay, so the movie starts strong out the gate with Cecilia's tension-filled escape from Adrian, and this is just a raw, unrelenting 11-minute long sequence that is an absolute masterclass in tension. By the time that is done, it's not until the 26-minute mark where we start to see the Invisible Man start to wreak havoc. First in the kitchen, then at sort of 31:30, we get that kind of sinister second breath outside. And this is followed almost immediately by the blanket pull scene when the girls are asleep. And the tension is kept really high from this point on as we're constantly scanning the negative spaces on screen for any sign of this like unseeable enemy. And it's not until a while later at 56:30 that we finally get our first glimpse of the fiend with that standout jump scare with the paint in the attic. And then a few minutes later, Cecilia is attacked viciously in the kitchen at the 58 and 30 mark before fleeing the house. And then it's that big jaw dropper face punch, Emily's murder, at 1 hour and 12 minutes. And that's followed a little over 10 minutes later by Cecilia's attempted suicide slash trap at 1 hour 26 and 30. And then it's cat and mouse in the car park at 1 hour 32 and 30. And finally, the big battle to save Sydney at 1 hour and 36 minutes.
Nice. Well, let's break down those acts for you. So, Act One consists of four fairly evenly paced scares. Act Two also consists of three main scares, a little closer together now. And Act Three rounds us out with a final three scare scenes. Now, I think it's worth mentioning here, Lee, that, just one more time, that the mileage here may vary as the tension is maintained through the director's use of negative space throughout the second act of the film.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of tension that's not an outright scare, but you're going to be watching that screen very closely at all times.
Yeah.
Um, and did you have any thoughts on the themes at work here in the film?
Yeah, so I think if we're looking at our Parker themes, I mean, we're definitely have the sort of fear of the unknown running through this film. I think in a wider context, this film feels like it's about, obviously domestic abuse, coercive control, psychological manipulation. Adrian is gaslighting and isolating Cecilia in a classically sort of coercive manner. And Moss plays the confusion, fear, and personal sanity questioning this generates in Cecilia to absolute perfection, I think. So I picked out a few lines from the script which sort of directly reference these ideas. Firstly, Cecilia states this in lines of dialogue in the film. The first example goes as follows. Cecilia continued, he's using his invisibility to do what he used to do to me, gaslight me, control me. And then again, a little bit later, she states, Cecilia continued, he always used to pressure me about having a baby, but he didn't know I was secretly taking birth control. It was the one thing I had control over. He knows my secret now, though, and I know he's angry about it. He's not dead. I just can't see him, but I'm going to find a way to expose him and you. And here we can hear Cecilia again sort of identifying Adrian's behavior, but also how she had a single area which she was able to sort of feel a sense of control over, her sort of bodily autonomy, I guess. But we also get the lines from Tom, which go as follows. Tom continued, "You're wrong about knowing him better than me. My brother controlled me long before he ever met you. I hated him. You and I have that in common." So, Tom, they're really sort of reiterating the film's thematic subtext and showing Adrian was a controlling character, and no matter who you were, right? I mean, if Tom is speaking the truth here, of course, but I also love how Whannell has used this idea of an invisible man and linking it directly to the film's themes. The abuse Cecilia is suffering is not the kind that leaves a physical mark, right? He's not hitting her per se. Um, he is psychologically manipulating her and controlling her, which is much harder to sort of identify because it generally happens behind closed doors. It's also much harder for others to identify as well. And I just think this is a great example of how a really great writer can take something like the concept of an invisible man and weave that idea directly into the expression of a film's theme. The abuse that Cecilia is suffering is really sort of invisible to the outside world.
Mm.
Yeah, what about you, dude? What were your thoughts on this?
Oh man, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I feel like this is such a thematically rich film. There's a lot to dig into. As far as our core Parker themes, like you, I'm leaning toward fear of the unknown as the majority for this one. The very nature of the invisible man, you don't know if he's there. He could be anywhere, anytime. He could be watching you take a dump and you wouldn't have a clue.
Hmm.
And that's where the fear engine of the film is fueled. But if you go a little bit deeper, I mean, let's look at Adrian. He's ridiculously wealthy and powerful, and that's even before we learn about the invisibility suit. I mean, hell, one could argue that he doesn't really even need the suit. I think there's an underlying statement in the film that powerful men like Adrian already possess invisibility, at least socially, when it comes to their discretions. I mean, look at shit today like the Epstein list. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but there's a good reason that Cecilia never even contemplates going to the police to report Adrian's cruelty before his death. He's untouchable. And deeper still, I think this whole film plays on the methods abusers use to gaslight their victims. He makes her doubt herself. He undermines her every time she strives to do something for herself. He breaks down her support network, removes her friends and loved ones from the picture until he is all she has left. And it's terrifying because there's nothing she can do. And the whole invisible thing, it's just an analogy for this because everything he's doing is unseen, no evidence, no proof. Cecilia faces an uphill struggle every time she tries to convince people of what's happening. Even Cecilia's name, she's abbreviated throughout the film by those closest to her as C, pronounced, C. And she is indeed the only one who truly sees Adrian for what he is. Even Tom is taken in and betrayed by him at the end. And another cool little touch I thought was, and this is just a little thing, but Adrian and Cecilia's career choices. I mean, she is an architect. She designs buildings, puts up walls, creates safe spaces. Whereas, he's in optics and surveillance. He makes sure he can see you at all times, even when you're most vulnerable. It's just genius writing, dude.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. I mean, I love that sort of point you make about the occupations, but yeah, I mean, it's just wonderful use of kind of analogy or metaphor from,
Mm,
Whannell in the writing here, and he's really sort of elevated the concept, I think, of the Invisible Man to really sort
yeah.
of strike at the core theme of the film. I think it's fantastic, fantastic writing. Okay, dude. So, what, if anything, did you think you've learned from the script here?
A few things for sure. I mean, firstly, I absolutely love Warnell's use of setups and payoffs. Nothing is random in this film. Everything is there for a purpose. I mean, we'll look at a few examples. When Adrian sets the kitchen on fire, Sydney uses a fire extinguisher to snuff the flames, and It's the same one that Cecilia will later use to reveal Tom. When Cecilia freaks out one night, Sydney's first instinct is to reach for a pepper spray, which she uses again to reveal Tom later in the film. The knife that vanishes from the counter and is found by Cecilia bagged up in the attic is used to murder her sister, as it has her fingerprints on it. And we asked why Adrian didn't murder that last guard in the parking lot, because too many people have seen him in his suit by now. So he knows the only recourse here is to frame Tom. Therefore, the more witnesses, the better. And it's just plant payoff, plant payoff. It's a masterclass in how to do it. And if it's something you're struggling with in your writing, I honestly can't think of a better script to read than this one, just to kind of set you on the right track. And secondly, as I mentioned already, Whannell is a master at creating short but visually captivating action lines. He does this by enacting a strong word choice and throwing up visual examples to put the reader in the correct headspace. And that's something that I've definitely taken on board and intend to use on the future. But how about you, man? What was your takeaways from this?
Yeah, so I mean, to be honestly, it's kind of more of the same from me, to be honest. I mean, I actually pulled out a few passages from the script just to, really highlight how wonderfully kind of evocative Whannell's writing is. And we've covered some of this already in the episode, but I've picked out a few examples different to those already mentioned. I love the line at the end of this passage where Whannell uses a wonderful simile. So check this out. In the script, it goes like this. He holds up an account form and a gold fountain pen. Tom continued. As soon as I have your signature and your banking information, I can start releasing the funds. The form wavers in the air like a formal invitation to another life. And I just love this line. I
Mm,
thought it was really, really evocative. And this continues throughout the script. So here's another sort of example, which I think is another really powerful and evocative line. And it goes like this. Interior, master bedroom, modernist house, day. Cecilia sucks in a gasp. This room is the white hot center of her trauma. I just thought that was a wonderful line as well. I
mm,
mean, it is
yeah.
kind of just throwaway, but it's fantastic. And this final one just captures as guards change in psychology so masterfully and succinctly. It's just pure joy to read, I think. So this is how this appears in the script. And then the guard turns, taking in the surreal sight of an arm floating in the air, detached from a body, spitting static like a faulty TV set. The guard blinks away any bluster in an instant, turning from bullish guard to child having a nightmare in 1 second. So, I mean, all of these examples, it's just really to say that Whannell writes in a way that seems to transcend kind of regular screenwriting, and it becomes just wonderfully kind of evocative prose,
Mm,
which I imagine is just such a godsend for actors and heads of department to latch onto as and use as kind of inspiration, when the film actually goes in production. And it's certainly something I think I want to do a little bit more in my writing, sort of use passages like
yeah.
this that are so kind of powerful and evocative, but very simple. And the last thing I wanted to chat about is something I noticed from the script, and it's something I've been thinking about for a while, and that is using kind of pre-planning how the tools of cinema can be used in your screenplay. So this leads to a transition, and it feels so simple when you read it, but from this we can tell that Whannell is really kind of thinking about the cinematic toolkit and how that can be used to create effective windows into a character's psychology. And Whannell does reference shots in the script a little bit, and we saw that when Cecilia faints, and the shot which follows her down is described. But in this next passage, he's thinking about how sort of diegetic sound can be used also. So check this out. Nurse. The sample showed us that it was pretty recent. We can't be sure of exactly when, but it must have been in the last month. The shock of this has spanked her out of her narcotic stupor. The nurse keeps talking, but her voice dims to nothing. And the dims to nothing is underlined and it's also capitalized. So it's really sort of giving the well, obviously Winnell's the director, but it's giving the heads of the department as well something to sort of latch onto, to say that this is really important and this is something that's going to appear in the film. And this is something I think it's really worth thinking about when writing your screenplays, because it does show a level of understanding, a level of sort of cinematic understanding, but I also think it shows a level of planning with regards to engaging and informing your audience. And I think that just makes scripts kind of stand out in a way, you know. Just that understanding of cinematic language, the tools of cinema, and thinking how you can transition through scenes as well. So yeah, I just thought it was really, really great, and it's certainly stuff that I'm going to be sort of taking forward and feel a bit more confident about using in the future. Okay, so how about dialogue, Lee? Were there any favorite lines or standouts for you?
It's quite a few actually, but one of my favorite exchanges was just the dismissive banter between Emily and the waiter at the restaurant just before her unfortunate demise. It's nothing massive. It's not like a huge moment, but we never really had much chance to connect with Emily besides her similarly strong showing against Tom in his office. And here's just a wee snippet of it. A grinning young man with arm tattoos and a denim apron breaks the battle of wheels, setting menus down. Waiter. Hey guys, I'm Taylor. I'll be looking after you tonight. Have you dined with us before? Do you need me to explain how this place works? Emily. I'm assuming you order food and then you eat it. Taylor. Well, yeah, pretty much. There's just a couple of things that we do that are it's all family style. So Emily, we've eaten here before. It's all good. Taylor. Okay, so you're good to go then. Would you like any water to start? Still or sparkling? Emily, the free kind. Taylor, tap it is. And it's just a cool little character moment, I think, and just highlights the differences between the two sisters. How about you, dude? Any bangers in there worth mentioning?
Well, first of all, I mean, I just have to say I love Emily. You know, she's got such kind of a chutzpah, and you know, she's great a character, I think. She just takes no shit from anyone. She's that kind of girl, right? I love the exchange between Sydney and Cecilia where they discuss James's date. And we sort of covered this earlier in the episode, but you know, the dialogue just really crackles. And just to sort of tell you again, I mean, that goes like this. Sydney, so did you get a good look at Dad's Tinder skank? Cecilia, Dad's Tinder skank? I'm confused. Is that a new band you like? Because I know a smart, awesome, modern young woman like you would never slut shame another woman with a term like that. Sydney, was she nasty? Cecilia, your dad would be the expert on this seemingly very nice person. Sydney, ah, I see. I'm picking up the code here. I'll tell him you didn't approve of her nasty ass. Cecilia, please don't. Yeah, so I mean that was actually cut from the film, wasn't it, Lee? But and we covered it
Mm.
earlier. But I just thought it was such a wonderful passage of dialogue, and just says so much about the characters and who they are. And we talked a little bit about this in The Mist, right? And how they sort of speak really defines who the characters are. They have an individual voice. Um, and then also, I thought there were two more lines that I picked out, and one's from James and one from Tom, and they both kind of get at the same idea. But I just thought they were so wonderfully handled. And these statements seem reasonable, and it's good advice in a way, but it also, you know, sort of subtextually gets at this idea that Cecilia is not believed and is perceived to be imagining things as a result of her sort of trauma and everything she's been through. So she's kind of dismissed while ostensibly being supported. So this line is from James. It's quite supportive, but it goes as follows. James, listen, see, Adrian will haunt you if you let him. Don't let him. And this one is from Tom. It sort of feels the same, but obviously turns out to be manipulative. So it goes like this in the script. Tom continued. He's gone, Cecilia. I saw his body. Don't let him win by bringing him back to life. So I just thought these are two great examples of how you can do
Mm.
two things with dialogue at the same time. You know, there are sort of character beats here, but they also hit heavily at subtext. And Winnell is, you know, just from reading this and his other screenplays, he is just really a master at this. And I
Yeah.
thought they were both handled so well by the actors in the film as well. Okay, so I think we're almost about done here, dude. But before we wrap up and talk about our next episode, what would you rate the script and the film as here, Lee?
Okay, so I'm going to give the script an 8, and but I think the film just pips it, and I'm going to give it a 9. And I think that's all down to Elizabeth Moss. I think she just elevates it to another level. How about you?
Yeah, funny. I actually gave the script a 9 and the film an 8. But I mean, I totally agree that Moss is absolutely sensational in this film, and it's a huge part of why this film is so good, I
Hmm.
think.
Awesome. So let's top that up. That is it's a super impressive 17 out of 20 for both the script and the film. It's interesting that you slightly prefer the script and I thought the film just kind of eked it out. So that was cool.
Mm.
But we are basically on the same page, so
Yeah, yeah. Well, we
nice.
can agree that both the script and the film are really great and just
Absolutely
worth
fantastic. Yeah.
absorbing, in
Yeah.
their entirety. Um, I had an interesting thing, Lee, just to bring up right at the end. I was thinking about this, and I like to think about these things, and certainly after we spoke to Phil Parker on the on our episode about the genre, I was just thinking, I wonder if this is like, could this be interpreted as like a thriller rather than a horror? Or could it
Absolutely.
even be interpreted as a sort of personal drama? If you're thinking, Moss's character in this, if you're looking at it as a sort of a thriller,
Hmm.
there's definitely, you could say, like a desire for order running through this film. She's
Yeah.
psychologically fractured. She's looking for stability. She's looking to escape, this psychological manipulation. And in that way, I think she's really sort of clamoring for some sort of order in her life. And
Yeah.
um, if you look at this film through the lens of maybe something like a personal drama, it's very much, or an inner drama, maybe. It's very much sort of focused on Cecilia's mindset, and you could say that there's sort of a desire for validation running through this film.
Yeah.
She's very sort of a lot of people are doubting what she's sort of saying and what she's thinking about what's going on, and I think she's really struggling to sort of get people to believe her. And I think, there's sort of things about the film which are obviously sort of in a horror space.
Yeah.
But like thrillers, I mean, the antagonist is sort of initially stronger than the protagonist.
Hmm.
And I was wondering about the sort of this idea of the supernatural being an element, and whether you think, I'll just get your take on this quickly, like whether you think Adrian being in that suit counts as that supernatural element that you need, within the horror space.
Absolutely. I think so. Absolutely. Yeah. I think it absolutely counts as a supernatural thing because what was it? Phil said it was
But super and natural, right?
super and natural. Yeah. So it's and whether it's by the use of science or magic,
Yeah.
science is essentially magic. It comes down to you could
You've got
you,
scientists
you
everywhere. Their toes are curling at that
so,
statement.
well that's science is essentially magic because like
Okay.
if you showed today's science to someone 50 years ago,
Mm.
if you showed like, I don't know, the internet and email and like
Yeah,
things like
yeah,
that, people they would think it was, it's magic. And the further back in time you take science,
yeah.
or
Mm.
like if you find someone, I don't know, like one of these uncontacted tribes in the middle of the jungle, if we just like waltzed in there and like showed them a movie on a phone, you know, they would think it was magic because
Mm.
you know and my point being that in a lot of ways science and magic are kind of interchangeable, I think,
Yeah.
in films. Like we obviously we didn't, and it would have made for a lesser film, but we could have had Adrian find some mystic relic in an archaeological dig that made him invisible.
Mm.
The basic gist of the plot would largely be the same, but that supernatural element would then be supernatural
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
comes from magic. My point being that whether it comes from magic or it comes from science, the outcome is still the same. So it's still kind of
Mm.
to me, it's still a supernatural
A
element of the
supernatural
film.
force. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still a supernatural force. It's
Mm.
something that's beyond, it's beyond everyone else, but this one guy.
Yeah.
And I think as well, you make a good point that I think a lot of films, if we wanted to class this as a personal drama or a thriller, we absolutely could. And I think that's the case for a lot of horror films.
Mm.
You could essentially class it as something else. A lot of films are placed into the horror umbrella, whether rightfully or wrongfully. But I don't think that's a bad thing because I've spoken earlier today about how awesome I think the horror fan base is, and I think if they accept something into the horror fold, then that's a great thing because you've immediately got like a very passionate and a very sort of like a
Loyal
very
fan base.
involved and loyal fan base. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
But I think a lot of horror films, if you wanted to class them as something other than horror, and you could use the Parker themes to make an argument that it is in fact something very different. Usually thrillers. I think thriller and horror are very sort of interchangeable very easily. Like is
Yeah, a lot of
Seven a thriller or
crossover.
is Seven a horror? Yeah, something like that.
Mm. Yeah. Well, see, I mean, it's the thing is it's interesting, isn't it? Because there's the real sort of distinction in my understanding is that between horror and thriller is that there is this presence of a supernatural force, as
Yeah,
opposed to a sort of more grounded, sort of antagonistic force.
yeah,
And just when I was sort of noodling over this film, reading the script and whatnot, I was thinking that the antagonist's kind of main kind of force here, I guess, is something that is grounded in science as opposed to being something that is more supernatural, or
mm,
something that is ghostly or interdimensional or, sort of something that's
yeah.
natural, which has
I
gone
think I
super.
think you're kind of getting caught up on the ghostly side of supernatural. I mean, like it's when we had this argument for the Terminator. Do you remember? Like,
Mm,
to me, the Terminator is a supernatural force, as it's like because it is more than its natural equivalent.
mm.
And to me, that's what makes the Terminator a horror film rather than a thriller. But you could argue that it is a sci-fi movie. You could argue that it is a thriller. We could argue this all day, and we would both have very valid and very,
We could
worthy
convince
points.
people of our opinions, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think you can argue about it till the cows come home, but
Yeah. It's interesting
I
to play
think,
with, though, isn't it? I
oh,
mean, you
absolutely.
can
Yeah,
sort of see,
absolutely.
we were obviously talking to Phil about, various films. Frankenstein, I think, was the one that he mentioned, which
Mm,
has sort of elements of the horror genre in there, and it's
yeah,
using horror tropes, but it's not actually a horror film.
yeah,
The central story is something that's not necessary. It's more of a sort of personal drama.
yeah.
Whereas, something like this, I think you can almost make that same argument, in a way that it's using the tropes of horror,
Mm,
but it's really more about and a sort of inner drama of Cecilia and her sort
yeah.
of desire for obviously sort of structure and order, but validation as well. Anyway,
Mm.
don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but I just thought it was we may have
No,
already done that,
absolutely, man.
but
Absolutely.
but I don't think I think it's interesting just to play with these things and sort of to think about genre. Yeah, go and get Phil's book and have a read of that because it will sort of go deeper into all of this. You can sort of get a greater understanding of what we're
Yeah.
gibbering on about. Anyway, let's leave that there for now. So next time, Lee, what are we having a look at next time?
Okay, so next time we're hitting up something really sort of like up to date. We're going to be taking a deep dive into Curry Barker's current smash Obsession.
Oh, nice, dude. So this is a fairly recent one for us, isn't it?
Yeah, this well at the time of this episode coming out, it was still doing strong in the pictures. I've seen this one already. It's really good.
Yeah,
Um, there's a lot of like room for interpretation in here. So I haven't read the script yet, but I am looking forward to getting my teeth into it and really kind of just taking it apart. But
nice,
it's
dude.
definitely unlike some horror films that I've kind of, people may sort of like not agree with me on this one, but I found like, for example, the last sort of two big horror hype trains, Weapons and Long Legs. I both thought they were good films, but I didn't feel they were worthy of the hype. This one I did. This one I thought was very much worthy of the hype. It's funny and
Nice.
it's like horrific in equal measures, and it's quite an impressive feat to be able to do that. And it's very, very it's very dark. It's very dark, and I think you'll really get a kick out of this one.
Nice. Good. Well, I'm looking forward to that, Lee. I mean, he's certainly an exciting kind of up and coming filmmaker,
Mm,
and certainly has the wind in his sails right now. So that'll be
absolutely.
really interesting to have a look at. Kind of keen to have a look at that one. Okay, so if you enjoyed the podcast, please do follow us, like the episodes. If you're feeling especially generous, leave us a review on your podcatcher of choice. It really does help us find new people. Check out our socials. We're on Facebook and Blue Sky. We can be reached there. We also publish to YouTube, so you can listen to us there. Feel free to drop us a line with any thoughts. You can do that on our website. That is www.scripttoscreampodcast.com. We always love hearing from you guys. And as I said, we have a lot of content there as well to support the episodes. So script samples, scarology graphs, all sorts of goodness going on there. We are also, as we mentioned, offering script reading services. Me and Lee will take a look at your scripts, give you tailored feedback on your work. And we're also creating pitch decks for projects now as well. We will collaborate with you to create a stunning pitch deck for your project, which you can obviously take out into the world and get pitching. Let me also stress here, we do not rely on generative AI in the creation of our pitch decks. We very much don't agree with that sort of thing for our pitch decks, do we, Lee?
Nope. AI pitch decks all look the same.
Yep.
Um, that was very much drilled into us at during our education.
Very much drilled
No,
in, wasn't
no AI pitch decks.
it? If you're me, it's no AI in general, Lee. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if that's of interest to you, obviously go to the website, navigate to the script reading page, and you can get all of the information there. But until next time, Lee, do take care.
Watch those corners, listen carefully, and keep writing those scares.